The quick and the dead. On the last Australian Mundi greybeard, Greg headed for the waterless Mundi regions where the winds and the sands sculpted and streaked the rocks, and where the Knights Templar of the armor plates would be at a disadvantage. There he waited and looked up at the sharp white stars. Soon his pursuers would arrive, for he had let it out that this was his destination. However, all was never as it seemed. On the last Mundi, or was it Tuesday, Greg, Greybeard's alter ego, was walking along the windswept plain of the Mundi, on his way back to his camp at the large rock, returning from a hike in the mountains. It had been a good day with nature. He already felt somewhat primeval. It was almost dusk, and so the stars of home would soon shine above and beyond. It was good to get away to see and learn what more that this life was all about. What's that? A mad, rabid dog ran out from the shadows, heading crazily but swiftly toward Greybeard. How did he know all this? Of what is a human made? Would an acute fear response give him a good shot at staying alive? Should he confront or avoid? In this case, he would have to try to avoid by flight and then perhaps confront by fight, which is really more like a freeze. There being flight, fight, or fright, we are actually hardwired to flee first, but if overtaken, we must defend, although a trance-like passive state of being filled with fear is also possible. Within seconds, Greybeard was primed. His pupils were dilated and his respiration had sped up. He stopped producing saliva and sweat poured out all over. His blood rushed away from his stomach to soak his brain and muscles in nutrients and oxygen, energizing him for what lay ahead. He froze, watched, and listened, but only for a second. Light waves flashing off of the dog's teeth had passed through his eyes that could now see all the better. Electric signals had entered his brain, the visual information routed to the opposite sides, this depth perception helping him to better locate and keep track of the oncoming and insane assailant. The sound waves of the dog's growling and barking crashed against the tympanic membranes of his ears and were on into his brain as sounds to be processed. Yes, all this as well in a second or two. Within milliseconds, neurotransmitters chemically ferried electric signals from one neuron to the next, spreading the latest news of the dog to a quick response unit born of ancient times. The sensory information had funneled deeper into the brain for further analysis. Greybeard's vast network of neurons lit up like a Christmas tree. The ultimate decision would be made by the amygdala, the fear center. Would there just be cause for a temporary alertness, or should there be a full-fledged fear response? The dog was going wild. There were no trees to climb. There was little chance for escape, but his throat tightened in case a scream was necessary. His body was preparing for the worst. This real danger was what his formerly safe life had come down to. To stare death in the face was now to live twice. The dog was 50 yards away and bearing down upon him, its nature having gone wilder than wild. The spinal cord had aided the cascade of the acute fear response to all the corners of Greybeard's body, activating the peripheral nervous system of his arms and legs, among other senses, to attend to stimuli of the new and dangerous environment. Greg threw a few stones, no effect, some more, nothing. He could not halt the foaming rabid beast. The flight signal had reached his muscles, their fibers already contracted to increase his running ability. Heart and legs racing, he ran and then looked back to see the savage dog gaining on him. He threw a larger stone. It even hit the dog, but there was no overall effect. Greybeard reflected on all his years on the forums, wishing that he had said baloney a few more times. The crossroads all went nowhere. The signpost pointed to oblivion. The vicious dog was almost upon him, so he stopped and waited and planned for the fight, having but a second. He wished that he had brought a weapon along. There was not even a stick or a branch lying about. He recalled his bevy of girlfriends, but for the one he had given Austin, for she was not much of a scientist. Eternity called out Greg's name, but this was a wrong number, for he was now totally Greybeard the Magnificent. The foaming dog leapt for Greybeard. Even one bite would be fatal. Greybeard's sturdy hiking boot caught the dog in the throat as he kicked toward that vital area, stunning the dog and sending him to the ground. Just as the dog was about to recover, Greybeard dropped a knee into his head and crushed it, the poor creature's brain splattering all over the ground. Greg's body and mind still swirled with the rapid firings of the acute fear response, but he eventually calmed down. There was a sour taste in his mouth. His salivary glands were turning back on, a good sign that his life was returning to normal. He walked back to camp and drank the beer that his glands had further requested. Greg wondered how Ninja Greybeard had accomplished the kill, then thought, "Thank you, evolution and natural selection. You made me what I am today." Another dog arrived, a tame one. Greg talked to it like a friend. 'Twas the Pope's highest cardinal himself who'd ordered the assault on the gray one, and so the end was still to be at hand. But on the other hand, Greybeard had algae, and had flung it into the eyes of his pursuers, then patted the end of his horse. The knights faltered and gave up the chase, but the spiritual chasers appeared in their stead, stating unscientific theories such as God is. And then, the spiritual chasers of God arrived. Meanwhile, science was rewritten to say that some ancient wise men had long ago discovered the weak and strong nuclear forces, while thinking about earth, air, fire, and water, then correlating it to consciousness. One of the ancient ones discovers a photon, as well as the entire electromagnetic spectrum, the strong force and the weak force, which corresponds to thought, but they called it Tauruses. The spiritualists wanted it all. They had to ordain themselves as special, above and beyond all the rest. For that way they could be deserving of even more reward in the afterlife. All this born out of their pride of their very own divine creation that they made up. Greg had befriended some of the spirituals, but had to use logic on some of those. Remaining from the top of a large weathered rock, Greybeard cried out, "Where is God?" Each spiritual answered in turn, "He is between our heartbeats and breaths. He is life. He is the universe. He is love. He is everywhere. All is of his illusion." Greybeard answered, "You have said nothing but life is life, and that the universe is the universe, and so forth. Just equating one real thing with another name of an invisible thing that is even quite undefined in the first place. Who are you, all that makes all of these words plied upon and on top of what is? We are the spiritual chasers of God. We label him as anything and everything we choose." Old Grey, looking a bit like God himself with his long gray and flowing beard, continued, "Are you human mammals of such recent vintage so extraordinarily important and special in the whole entire scheme of things that took so many tens of billions of years to stumble along in such a haphazard way? Yes. Do 1,000,000,000,000 stars exist just to illumine your night? Yes. Do 40 million species thrive just for your delight? Yes. And is all of space just for show, to glorify you? Yes. Did the supernovae stardust showers of the atomic elements write the names of future humans across the sky way back when? Yes. Does every atom exist and spin to service you? Yes. Did proto-men, and before them and all, live, die and suffer only for your promise? Yes. So then every dinosaur and more was condemned, so you could gain a space to live, war, and kill? Yes. Does the sun shine with you in mind? Yes. Was heaven's shrine built just to await your coming? Yes. Oh, my religious ones, how vain and proud you all are. What hubris, conceit, self-love, and vanity have you to claim such full self-importance, to demand so much from the universe, that you would even claim an angelic vapor that drives a living being, provides character, morality, and consciousness on top of a burdensome, fragile, and expensive organ, such as a brain ne'er to be used. It's a silliness born from exaggerated self-worth, an invisible hilarity, becoming a merciless indoctrination. May you all soon recover your humility. As such spoke the humble graybeard to show the truth of what we all are. Mammal, organic, past narcissism and self-adulation, to the bioelectrochemical organism evolved upon a planet near a star, in the long and winding mindless way of slow time, dust and selection by death that sifts the best from the rest, evolution. And such did Analog once observe that the creature outthinks the creator with inferior tools to imagine a much more peaceful and enjoyful world, and that it is emotion that creates delusions of heavenly scenarios of creation and an existence beyond death. These are lessons in humility to all mammals grown so high and haughty. So, enjoy it all as though you will never know it again, for who is to say that you shall? Only one spiritual was left at the base of the rock, but she had graybeards surrounded, with her words on evolution symbolized by the Bible. "That's it," said Gray Newt. "I'm gone." And so he fired up his jetpack and launched himself into the sky toward the white patches of vapor and fluff. Some of the aboriginals now thought him a god, and so he became the legend that God was an old, white-haired, gray-bearded guy sitting on a cloud. Mundi memories. Greg walked to the mountain and back, sitting safe on some lone rock for the lack of any other seat to pick but that of his own, whence he slept, thinking he was all alone. As there he lay asleep so peacefully in repose, some dogs wandered by and licked his nose, and while he turned untossed, a kangaroo of boundless flight hopped over him too. The great equalizer stalks all creatures made, lying ever just round the corner in the shade, taking both human and the beetle as one, after their lives are spent from rolling some dung.